Hi everybody, welcome to another episode of the Stellium Astrology podcast. I'm Stephanie James, your host, and today I am recording an episode on Synastry. I don't feel like I'm done with the subject just yet. I am currently in the process of figuring out a bit more of a plan rather than just kind of winging it. Although the winging it method has been quite successful so far. I've managed to get episodes out as and when. The dust doesn't feel like it's settling for me just yet. However, there does seem to be a sense of routine forming for me as I have now put my little boy into nursery, and I have a morning each week where I have time to get on with some of my personal work, the astrology stuff. This is my first day back at work. I'm recording an episode because, it'd be nice to get a few episodes recorded. I think I'm going to have to do that next week. I've got lots of stuff I need to try and organise, lots of writing to do, figuring out my availabilities, all of that sort of thing, so that I can get back into doing what I used to do without even thinking about it. It takes a lot of planning now because I've got to think about the logistics of a tiny little person, my little boy who literally, nobody ever really, you can't prepare yourself for quite how huge the change is when you become a parent. So anyway, today's my first day back at work, and though I'm technically in my office, my studio, inverted commas, I am actually, I'm sitting in my living room. I've got everything set up. Sadly, my microphone doesn't work. My Yeti mic doesn't work on my computer. So I'm recording on my phone still. Thankfully, I still have a method in which to record myself. And I'm just installing an update on my computer. So if you suddenly hear it make a noise, that's because the update has installed. But this week, I wanted to talk about another type of synastry. I wanted to talk about a very famous couple, hugely famous couple. We've all heard of them. It's Meghan, Duchess of Sussex, Meghan Markle, and Harry, Prince Harry. So I've got their details. I'm just going to open up my. As you know, I'm doing this on my phone. So it's making me put my password in. Come on. There we go. So I've just opened up Meghan's chart in Equal House because I am a person who uses Equal first and foremost. I was, as they say, raised on Equal, and I don't know. It might be a little bit of a an OCD thing. I don't want to insult anybody who has OCD. I don't want to loosely use that term. But yeah, I'm a Capricorn with a Scorpio moon. Having things looking quite perfect is quite nice for me. So let's have a look at Duke of Sussex Harry, born on the 15th of September 1984. Now, interestingly, my sister and I were born in the same years as William and Harry. I was born the same year as William, and my sister was born in the same year as Harry. So my mum, I think, has watched them grow up and watched us grow up, and it's a sort of that kind of thing where you find them relatable, I guess. But anyway, I'm not looking at William and Kate today. I'm looking at Harry and Meghan. Now, Harry has got he's got a lot of earth in his chart. His big three are all in the earth signs. So he's got Sun in Virgo at 22 degrees, Ascendant at 11 Capricorn, and Moon at 21 Taurus. And his Sun's in the 9th. Obviously, his Ascendant is the literally the starting point of the first house, and his Moon is in the 5th house. So you could say that though he's got a lot of earth and is incredibly practical, for Harry, having the earth signs on the cusp of, the first house and Moon in the 5th and the Sun in the 9th. The 9th and the 5th have that kind of, the Sagittarius and the Leo vibe. That obviously doesn't mean that because his son's in the 9th house he's going to have a Sagittarius flavour, because he's not. He's got Sagittarius planets. He's got Sagittarius on the cusp of his 12th house using equal, and he also has Mars and Uranus and Neptune in Sagittarius. However, there is that kind of added that 9th house Sagittarian essence about the placement of his sun, where it is residing. I think when I did my some of the earlier podcasts on the houses, I talked about the fact that you've got the planet, which is kind of like the actor, the sign, which is kind of how they adorn themselves and how they go about their sort of their role, how they, what's my motivation type thing. And the house is kind of like the scene and the setting and the placement where they will be. So Harry has got this 9th house international flavour about him. He's definitely, travelled when he was in the army. He's done a lot for, he's gone and fought wars and been involved as a prince would be when working on the, I'd say the front line. I don't know, but I doubt highly that he was on the front line. He'd have probably been doing more of the planning and the logistics as far as, war is concerned. But, there's this philosophical, there's a nice kind of vibe about the 9th house in a sense that, they are about understanding and experiencing different cultures, stepping outside of your usual kind of life experience to experience something new. And, the moon in the 5th house, well, that feels very playful and, very enjoys, having, being able to live life for the fun side of things, doing the fun stuff. I don't know if anybody's watched The Crown. I know I've talked about it previously. I really thoroughly enjoyed watching The Crown. I really binged. I tried not to binge it. I controlled myself a little bit because I just found it just so... It warmed me to the royal family. I've got a lot of Aquarius in my chart. Though I'm a Capricorn, the Aquarius stuff is all my personal planets, so it's very strong. It really flavours my personality. And I also have a Jupiter-Uranus conjunction as well. So I am not your typical Capricorn. I don't necessarily respect hierarchy because that's the hierarchy. I respect people who have earned my respect. And in a roundabout way, what I'm trying to say is that I don't naturally feel inclined to appreciate having a ruling structure. But having watched The Crown, it humanised the royal family for me. I think that's what I'm trying to say. I've always been a fan of Harry, though. I've always been a fan because he was the rebel of the royal family. He was the royal rebel, wasn't he? So yeah, if you've seen The Crown, you'll understand the duty that is literally the people are born into. So the Queen was born into a sense of duty, unknowingly, not educated in the way that the men were educated back in those days. But actually the Queen, she was born, her uncle abdicated from the throne, her father became the king, and then when he passed away, she was the next in line. And she has since been the longest ruling monarch of all time. She's just had her jubilee, her platinum jubilee, which I believe is 75 years? Or is it just 70? 75 years, I'm struggling to think now. But it just seems absolutely unbelievable that somebody could be in power for that amount of time. And, the kind of job that she does, though it comes with, I say perks, she'll never have to worry about, some of the financial issues that we worry about. She has her own burdens to carry. So what I'm trying to say here is that Harry, her grandson, he is not he doesn't have that kind of responsibility, that kind of burden that he has to carry. But it's interesting because the Queen, I believe the Queen has, does she have Capricorn rising? And I do want to look at her chart quickly now. Can I get back to it without there being too much trouble? Apologies for the noise, by the way. I've got the window open because it's still quite stuffy. It's just nice to not be in my car recording a podcast, I have to say. Where's the Queen? Where's the Queen? Oh, it's not even connected them. It's got Prince Charles, though. Let's have a quick look for the Queen. Sorry to faff about. Elizabeth. Surely she'll come up first. There she does. Yeah, so she's got Capricorn rising and she's got Saturn on the midheaven in Scorpio. Interestingly, I'll open up her chart as well. So I didn't mean to do this, but we're going into a bit of a queen vibe as well. So yeah, we've got the Queen's got her Scorpio midheaven at 25 and Saturn at 24. She's got Capricorn rising at 21. So Harry's sun is trine her ascendant. His sun is 22 degrees. Her ascendant is 21 degrees. And her ascendant is where the Saturn-Pluto conjunction occurred in January, 12th of January 2020. Remember that year when everything went to poop? I was going to say a rude word then, but, you know, got to reel it in. And she also has Sun in Taurus. So she has some synastry with Harry. There's a lot of synastry you'll find with relatives. If you haven't ever checked your relatives' charts, it's really worth doing. But anyway, I just wanted to glance at the Queen's chart quickly because... Now let me open my charts again. I know that Harry has got Saturn and... There we are, just opening it up. My phone is getting super slow. It's got a lot of stuff on it. Yep, Harry's got midheaven at 17 Scorpio and Saturn at 12. So he and the Queen both have Saturn in Scorpio hanging around their midheaven, and they both have Capricorn ascendant. But there's a very different flavour. I mean, we don't know the Queen personally, and I'm sure she is a lot of fun to the people that know her. Who knows? Yeah, there's definitely a much more of a fun flavour about Harry. Just looking at his chart, you can see that he's got that... there's a lightheartedness about having, the moon in the 5th house. There's a need for playfulness. There's a need for enjoyment, for living life for life's sake. That sun in the 9th house is probably going to be, as we know about Harry, he does a lot of charity work. And, he's got 11th and 12th house planets as well. So his midheaven and Saturn by equal house are sitting in the 11th. He's also got Uranus in the 11th, but on the cusp of the 12th. It's in conjunction with Mars, but a bit wide, but there is a conjunction there. And he's also got Neptune at 28 of Sagittarius as well. So he's got a sort of a stellium of planets in Sagittarius hanging around the 11th and 12th house, midheaven and Saturn in the 11th, and then he's got his his sun in the 9th plus the 5th house moon. To me, without even knowing who he is, you get a sense of somebody who is charitable and altruistic, somebody who wants to leave the world in a better state than they found it, in a sense. And his mum is Princess Diana, so he is, his role model. One of his, the most important role models in his life, who obviously was sadly killed in 1997 in a car accident. That role model, that person that he's living up to, the person who he, will never be able to, he won't be seeing in this life again, sadly. I think he's carrying some of her charitable qualities, some of her compassion and some of her kinder and more the qualities that really warmed everybody to her, that earned her the name the princess, the Queen of Hearts, you know, the people's princess. And she was Cancerian, and I think she had Sun trine Neptune, and she had an Aquarius moon. So Harry's got Venus in Aquarius. You know, his Neptune is, I think it's square his Sun. He's got a Jupiter-Neptune conjunction, actually. And the Jupiter's in Capricorn. So it's, you know, he's got some of those aspects that are kind of echoing, or those placements that are echoing his maternal line, that Venus in Aquarius. You know, I think that Princess Diana has Venus in Taurus, actually, as well. So, you know, there's like this nice little echoing of this Venus in Taurus, and he's got his moon in Taurus, and then this his Venus is in Libra, my apologies. Not Aquarius, I need to put my glasses on. But so relationships with Venus and Libra, relationships are going to be important to Harry. And his Venus is in the 10th house, which is very much, you know, when you're looking for that kind of relationship, it's a relationship that of somebody that you can respect for who they are, as opposed to, you know, not really taking the relationship too seriously. There is a sense of looking up to the feminine role models, the feminine archetypes in his life. Who can blame him for having those kind of, you know, the Queen being that, you know, an amazing female role model, you know, a very professional, stoic woman. And then you've got Princess Diana, who was loved by all. That could be described as, you know, Venus in Libra, you know, the loving charm of Princess Diana, the compassion. She was very beautiful. And then you've got the Queen, who's very fair. You know, she, by all accounts, you know, she's always done what she could to serve the crown in the most honest and, you know, respectful way. And, you know, her decisions aren't made from an emotional perspective. They're always made from the perspective of what's best for the crown, for the country, and, you know, what's the fairest. You know, it might not seem fair, but she always respected and tried to preserve tradition. So, you know, that's potentially Venus in Libra in the 10th house. You know, the fairness, the respectability, looking up to all these women. So, and, you know, Harry obviously has had some very public relationships, which is reflected by that Venus in the 10th house as well. Interestingly, he has Cancer on the descendant, so that makes his moon very important. You know, it may be that, you know, you could look at that, interpret that, thinking that his mum is Cancerian, and thinking he would like to attract somebody who possesses or embodies the qualities of his mother. And, you know, when we look at Meghan Markle, we realise that Harry has attracted somebody who does have a 5th house, prior to being with him, had a 5th house profession. You know, she was an actress and she was a blogger. She enjoyed food. She had a food blog, and, you know, something that you could say is very much a moon in Taurus in the 5th house activity. But yes, so she was, obviously she was in a show called Suits. I've watched quite a lot of Suits as well, after she married, or after she got in a relationship with Harry. But it was always something that I wanted to watch anyway. And then I got into it because I happened to just catch the first episode on Netflix, and I was like, this looks quite good, actually. And it's quite funny, it's quite fun, it's a bit silly, and a bit serious. It's the kind of format where it's like every season something major's going on, and you're like, oh, and it just gets to the point where people are suing each other left, right and centre, obviously. You know, that's just how it would be in that show. So it gets a bit tiring, but it is fun to just sort of like mindlessly watch it. But yeah, so, you know, the 5th house moon for Meghan Markle is described in Harry's chart, I would say. I don't know if you disagree, you agree. And her moon slightly wide, but is opposing, you know, his midheaven. very widely opposing Saturn. And that's on the IC, that's on his IC as well, the moon on the IC. So I think for Harry, you know, there is that living in the age of the feminine, you know, the divine feminine. It adds extra emphasis to his Venus placement as well, doesn't it? Having the moon in Taurus with that Venus up in the 10th house, there's this real sense of the feminine archetype, the female archetype in his life is extremely powerful, and is reputation defining, you could say. It could really, if not career defining, reputation defining. I haven't mentioned it, but he also has Pluto at 0 degree Scorpio sitting up there in the 10th house as well. It's making aspects to his natal Jupiter and natal Mercury by sextile, and both Mercury and Jupiter are trine. Mercury's at 5 Virgo and Jupiter is at 3 Capricorn. So, you know, he's got a nice little aspect pattern there. There are, obviously, as I mentioned, some challenging aspects in his chart, but overall, it's very interesting. He also does have Uranus opposite Chiron. A lot of people have a Uranus-Chiron opposition. They are two planets that did a very long dance. You know, so it's like one of those generational aspects that has affected a lot of people, and it apexes, pardon me, at his natal Mercury. So he has a T-square in his chart, which involves a transpersonal planet, an asteroid, which is a very slow-moving asteroid, takes 50 years to do the whole chart. So, you know, we might say that has almost transpersonal vibes about it as well. You know, it literally takes 50 years to do an entire orbit of the natal chart, and you know, Chiron has Saturn and Uranus vibes about it, vibes of not really being, you know, fitting in. You know, there's a sense of never quite fitting the mold, and perhaps you know, either having heavy responsibility or feeling isolated in some way. You know, that kind of Saturn-Uranus combination. So Chiron can be the most painful place in our chart that we really can't, you know, ever heal ourselves. And that happens to also be in his 5th house, and that is in Gemini. So Chiron for him is connected to, you know, really speaking, communicating a message, saying what he really wants to say. You know, it's connected to that really. And opposite Uranus in Sagittarius, apexing at Mercury in Virgo. So there's a kind of communication, and you know, I can almost see like outcasting. I can almost see the interview with Oprah here. You know, it's like wanting to say what he really wants to say, and doing that with Meghan, and then it coming out in a very terrible way, painting the royal family in a very, very negative light, and probably damaging his relationship with his family irreparably. You know, and that is through his choices, his relationship choices. You know, you can't help who you're born into. You can't really help who you fall in love with either, but you can choose who you know, spend your time with and associate with. He made a choice to be with Meghan, and he also made a choice to step down from his royal duties to focus on living a life and you know, actually experiencing family life, and you know, not having the responsibilities, because even though he has a much more footloose and enjoyable future prospect than perhaps William, who's, you know, heavy responsibility weighing on his shoulders, he does still have, Harry always had that responsibility to be a member, an active member of the royal family. So that Saturn on the midheaven does make sense. So yeah, so that's just looking at Harry really. And just another aspect, that Mars Uranus, it's a bit of a firecracker, isn't it? It's a little bit of a loose cannon as such. And Harry, we know he's a bit of a loose cannon. We know he makes bad choices. We know he says the wrong things sometimes. We know he does the wrong things sometimes. Turning up at a fancy dress party dressed as a member of the Nazi party, is not in best taste, is it, for the royal family? They do put their foot in it, these royals. So that was just a glance at Harry's chart. Meghan, she has got Cancer rising. So Harry has Cancer on the descendant, Capricorn rising. Meghan has Cancer rising at 24 degrees. So she had the Saturn, Pluto and Jupiter conjunction hanging around her descendant. Very close to, but not quite exact, if you're going to be like picky like me, picky Capricorn picky. But actually, 24 degrees, yeah, it's within very tight orb. The orbit is of 2 degrees separating. So, well, in fact, I would say it's applying to her descendant. She has Mars in Cancer as well, which is square to her. Looks like she's got it square to her Moon, Saturn and Jupiter conjunction. Now, Meghan is born on the 4th of August 1981, so she's a little bit older than Harry, and she was born in Canoga Park, CA, and we've got the time as 4:46 a.m. I think she's an A time or a double A. It's trustworthy. Harry, just FYI, 15th of September 1984 in Paddington at 4:20 p.m. Those of you who have ever dabbled in the enjoyment of cannabis, 4:20 is stoner hour. So I think that's quite interesting that Harry was born at stoner hour. Just it gives an added oomph to that kind of alternative flavour that Harry kind of carries with him. Now, Meghan's chart. Now, Meghan has got Chiron at 22 Taurus. That's on Harry's moon. So the Chiron contact there. And she has got Pluto at 21 Libra and Neptune at 22 Sagittarius. Now, this has formed what is called a yod. I did talk about a yod in some of the aspect pattern shows. And this is interesting because it's any planets that are 150 degrees apart, which is also known as a quincunx, or I think a contraparallel. Am I right? I think so. They don't work cohesively. They are very, they struggle with each other. There's like a light switch and it's either on or it's off. It's not, they don't work together in a harmonious way. It's very conflicting. So she's got Pluto quincunx her Chiron, and she has Neptune quincunx her Chiron, but both Pluto and Neptune are in sextile. And actually, if we have a look, she's got Pluto, Jupiter, Saturn and her moon all in Libra. So, all of those Libra planets are kind of singing from the same hymn sheet as such. Pluto's quite widely separated from the triple conjunction she has with the moon, Saturn and Jupiter, because that's 4, 5 and 6 in their respective order. Pluto's at 21, so it's much wider. But she has got a lot of stuff going on in Libra, so obviously relationships are going to be important to her. Harry's moon is right on top of the apex of her yod, or her, her finger of God. And this is interesting. Sometimes you see Chiron contacts with people, with relationships, and often when there is a Chiron contact and relationship, there can be some kind of difficulty that is hard to integrate into the relationship wholeheartedly, and the word I'm looking for is without prejudice. Like, it's really hard to, it's not really what I'm looking for, but what I'm trying to say is it can be very hard to unconditionally absorb yourself into the union of a relationship or with the family. There seems to be an element of, and like I said with Chiron, there's a Saturn-Uranus flavour to it, almost like a boundary or a refusal to what's the word now? Conform. So it's a challenge to truly, And, you know, you shouldn't give yourself up wholeheartedly and lose yourself to a relationship. I'm a great believer in maintaining independence in relationships, living separate lives if you want to. But if you've got a strong enough relationship that you can enjoy each other's company and, you know, enjoy being together without the, you know, the codependence that some people seem to find themselves in, then you can have a truly happy relationship that allows you to flourish as an individual. So I'm not against it at all. In fact, that's partly what my most successful relationships have been based on, she says, with a string of X's. But what I mean is, you know, like, you know, being symbiotic with somebody is not necessarily healthy. And with his moon on her chiron, not only will he be reflecting in some ways, he will be reflecting back some of her generational, some of the issues that are the wounds that are inherited in a generational sense. He's also going to be triggered by her chiron as well. And who's going to be triggered? His family, because the moon is his family. So interesting that this Yod is so vocal in her chart. Vocal in, you know, Chiron in Taurus being an incredibly vocal placement for Taurus, or a lack of having a voice, therefore. Because, you know, Taurus is representative of the throat and the vocal cords. The neck is also the bottleneck of the entire body, where we have the entire system of, you know, the chakra system, where we've got all of them lining up through the centre of the body, the main chakras. But everything has to travel through the neck in order to come out of the mouth, through the third eye or through the crown. So a lot of issues are held up through the throat. And without expressing yourself truly, without allowing yourself to speak your truth or have a voice, we can suffer not necessarily health issues with the throat, but we can really have issues and blockages, energetic blockages. So a very interesting, because she seems quite an outspoken person. Apologies, by the way, they're doing some building around the corner from me, and it sounds quite loud at the moment. Let me see if I can just shut the window. Oops, oh, dear me. That's a bit better. So yes, so that's interesting. Lots of people have a Pluto-Neptune sextile, so that's not so remarkable. It's not so remarkable. You know, they're both very slow-moving planets, and they both go direct and retrograde approximately the same amount of time each year. So their movements forwards and backwards are going to be very closely linked for, you know, periods of time. Just have a look at Harry's chart. Yes, he has that connection as well in his chart. He's got Pluto at 0, Scorpio, and he also has Neptune at 28, Sag. Not as tight as Meghan's, but, you know, it's still there. And he was born, she's 1981 and he's 1984. So you can see that the dance is incredibly slow. But that was just something that jumped out at me, that Yod anyway. And poignant because his moon is right on top of it. So her presence in his life, to sort of put it bluntly, is quite awkward. You know, I can only describe the quincunx as being an awkward aspect, and it's uncomfortable, and you know, it's I feel like it's our blind spot. And so if we've got aspects which somebody's planets highlight, particularly something like the moon or the sun, where you're either spotlighting something or reflecting back to somebody, then you are going to be your blind spot, your natural blind spot in life, you know, your the traits you don't necessarily recognise that you possess. And I'm not talking about what we project necessarily, but things that are literally not on our radar about ourselves. There's a thing that I learned when I studied counselling skills called the Johari window. It's a really, really interesting idea where there's things that we know about ourselves. There are things that we, you know, that we I'm going to have to pull it up on my laptop if I can find it. It's so nice to be at a computer and to be able to do all of this now. Let's get in and have a quick look. Let's type in Joe Harry, it should come up. If you're interested, it's spelled Johari. So let's have a quick look and see what this says. Okay, so the Johari window model is it's a grid, and so you've got the areas that are known to yourself and known to others, then the areas that are known to others but not to yourself, then there are the areas that are not known to others but you are known to yourself, and the not known to self and not known to others. So with the Johari window, you'd have like known to self and known to others are aspects about your personality that you own and that other people recognise. Like maybe for me it could be that I am a bit bossy, and I'm like to be in control of doing my own, like in control of my own workload and that kind of thing, and other people know that about me. But what might not be known to myself is that perhaps maybe I'm not as good at leading or managing my own workload as I think I am. Other people can see that, but I don't see that myself. And then you've got like the known to self but not known to others. So think about me in my square capacity, like going out into my my square job and my usual life where I generally keep myself to myself. Not everybody knows that I'm an astrologer, but I know about myself. This is the stuff that I hold back because I don't want people to perceive me in a certain way. And then you've got the not known to self and not known to others, the unknown, which could be the future, things that are going to occur, this is where the interesting flavour of relationships come in, because there are aspects that we don't know about ourselves and others don't know about us either, that can be brought out through relationships. So the Johari window is really interesting, some really interesting exercises in order to discover a bit more about yourself through the Johari window. But in the context of Synastry and the context of this, just looking at this chart, I feel like something like the Yod and having, Chiron being highlighted by the moon would definitely be an interesting Johari exercise of having aspects not known to self and others not knowing about you either. So you are on a true learning journey. But yes, also, so she has got her sun in Leo at 12 degrees, and that's sort of widely conjunct Mercury also in Leo, but at 5, and that's in the first house. Now the Queen, did I screenshot her chart? The Queen has her moon at 12 Leo and Neptune at 22 Leo. So how interesting that the Meghan has her sun on the Queen's moon. So she's definitely highlighting the Queen's, the royal family, literally the royal family. And apparently the Queen and Meghan did get on. I don't know the ins and outs. I don't know everything about them, but I do know that they did tend to have a good relationship. So that is interesting. It's interesting that it brings the Queen's moon into Meghan's first house. So Meghan's presence in Harry's life, they had that lunar solar thing going on. His moon on her Chiron, her sun is on the Queen's moon. Like there's this real connection there that is amazing, really, when you think about the fact that she's not part of their family, but she became a part of their family. And who would have ever guessed that he would have married her? Who would have ever guessed that they would have ever got together? It was just a random and interesting development. So that's interesting. Yeah, and her moon, Saturn and Jupiter conjunction, that triple conjunction is very interesting as well, because it describes, some of the hardships and the politics around her family, her relationships. The Jupiter-Saturn conjunction is definitely one about learning about boundaries and learning about yes and no, basically, and relationship with authority. Whether or not you're inclined to be cooperative, or whether or not you want to push against your leaders, your authority figures. It's interesting that she's got 4 planets in Libra, so Stellium in Libra, Moon, Saturn, Jupiter and Pluto. She's and this is in her 3rd house by equal. In fact, her midheaven is at 11 Aries, so her midheaven is her IC is also there. So these planets are all over her IC. So this describes, perhaps some of the challenges she has in her own family, and on top of that, some of the hardships and challenges she faces in any family she finds herself in. It's an interesting one. Also, there's like an international flavour, and very serious and responsible, isn't it, that moon, with the moon Saturn, and then, also cares about what's fair, cares about the right thing to do. She was already quite a charitable person before she became a member of the royal family. She already did charity work and, cared a lot about feminist issues and things like that. So she's definitely an interesting character. And having, Moon Saturn in Libra, there's definitely, playing a character in Suits is interesting, because obviously Libra is connected to law. The equality, fairness, the balance that law provides. So to have her Moon, Saturn and Jupiter in Libra, and she was in that programme Suits where she played a paralegal, it's interesting that would then transmute from being an on-screen persona into a real life, very, very serious, responsible relationship, huge commitment in a relationship. And Saturn does rule her descendant as well. So we've got Saturn ruling the descendant, Jupiter ruling the 6th house, Jupiter also ruling the 9th house. So there's an element of work and of... I don't necessarily think that the 9th house is connected to altruism, but it's definitely connected to doing... having a philosophy, living life by a certain set of rules that feel like they are in tune with who you are as a person and your perspective. Not just a set of rules for the sake of living by the book, but having your own personal guidebook of, morals and morality, basically. So, an interesting chart to look at. I do know actually that she has got, it's not calculated on the chart I'm looking at the moment, but I know she has Lilith at 24 Scorpio, and what I find very interesting is that her Lilith is trine her ascendant, very tightly trine, and I feel that she has had a lot of Lilith archetype projected onto her, whether or not she truly embodies it, because none of us can really know without knowing her. Whether she truly is that Lilith is to be seen, but she seems to be playing out a role where she wants to do things her own way, and she doesn't really want to do things according to other people's rules and ideas. She married a member of the royal family, and he left his duty as a royal in order to pursue a family life with her and have children with her, and to live you say a normal life, as normal as it could be for somebody like Prince Harry. But very interesting that they're both living that kind of outcasted Lilith experience. And yeah, just before I kind of close on this, her Lilith actually is basically on the Queen's Saturn and midheaven as well. So I'm talking about mean Lilith when I talk about Lilith, by the way. So Lilith on the Queen's Saturn and midheaven could well be it's described, Lilith is also known as the Black Moon. And I did hear another podcast talking about that. They don't like using black as negative. But I think that black is more about the void. Literally the fact that the void is nothingness and there is no colour that escapes from it. It is literally just pitch black. So having the black moon there and it being a lunar quality, there could be a sense of reflecting some of the less desirable qualities of the royal reputation back to the Queen on her Saturn, the ruler of her ascendant, but also up there on the midheaven very publicly for everybody to see. So anyway, that was kind of like a three-way Synastry episode. I hope you enjoyed it. It's just one of those things that was a little bit off the cuff today, but it felt right to do it. And I know I'd wanted to talk about Harry and Meghan for a while. So yeah, I hope you enjoyed it. Don't forget to go to the YouTube channel and subscribe. And if you want to screenshot and email me, Stephanie, Stefanie, at stelliumastrology.com, you can, if you email me, it just removes any kind of confusion as to whether or not you're actually subscribed, because some people have private channels and they're not aware of it, and when they subscribe, it doesn't show me who you are, and I can't enter you into a draw for a Magic of Eye astrological almanac diary towards the end of this year, 2022. I've got one link now below my podcasts, which literally takes you to everywhere you need to go. I would strongly urge you to sign up to the mailing list, because that's where all of the interesting stuff is going to be happening. I'll be sharing with you my updates and what's going on. I'm going to be opening up my booking calendar very soon. I've got some work. I don't know whether to change the booking calendar, how I want to do it, but I've definitely got some new services. I'm sort of bringing everything up to date for me to make me able to function, basically, make things more functional, and for me to be able to continue to do what I do. So yeah, keep your eyes peeled. I will be emailing everybody with the updates on the services available, and all the other interesting developments that are going on at the moment currently for myself. And yeah, that's all for today's episode. So tune in next week for another one. Thanks very much. Bye now.